Hey guys, I'm Kevin with Larian Studios, and today we're going to show you how to make a basic level for modding, and we're going to put that level in GM mode afterwards to see how you can make something from scratch from the beginning, put it into the game, and then share it with other people so they can play it and just enjoy all the custom content that you and we create. So let's start from the beginning then, and that is the library with our Steam games. And there we will see Divinity Original Sin 2, and we'll make sure that the Divinity engine data is enabled, which will download all the tool data that we need. Then we'll go to our tool list where we have our Divinity Engine 2, and we'll just start that one right up. Now the first time you'll open this, you'll get the question to fill in the data folder, and you'll get a window like this where the game data path is empty and you have to fill in the C program files up until the Original Sin 2 data folder. Now we have a wiki page in which this is explained specifically for Steam, but also if you go from the start and you go to Larian guides, you'll see also a setup for GOG, which is slightly different, but it's also explained there, and in the download from GOG how to do that. What you basically do is you just make sure you have all the data, and then once the editor starts up, you give a correct path to the actual data folder of the Divinity engine and of the game. And if you have that set up, then you can simply, start up the game and make your own project. Now for this, we will make our first project, which means we will go to select your project, create, and there we get a choice between adventure or add-on. Now the difference is that an adventure is something like our Original Sin 2 campaign, where you make some characters in character creation and you start on an entire adventure with combat, story, plot twists, all of that. And for that you make one big adventure. But if you want to make something little, like a new level for GM, or you want to add a sword to the game, you put that in an add-on. So in this case we'll make an add-on, and we'll target GM, so Game Master mode, and we'll also load data from GM because we would like some of the cool assets they have over there. And we'll call this Kevin's awesome mod. And we'll start the engine. Now I'll rearrange this in a second so you'll have a better view of the game itself. And I'll also show the basic panels that we have at your disposal. But first, we're going to get the question to create a level. Because if you make a new project, you'll probably want a new level. If you don't, for example, if you're just making new swords or new characters, you can go into like Enter Sandbox or Create and Enter Sandbox, which is basically a pre-made level for you that has everything a general level has, so you can test stuff out. And you can also just make stuff in there that's not specific to the level. So if you want to make a new character, you can just make it there, see how it looks in the sandbox, then save the character, and the sandbox will not change. It will just be the same next time you load it up. So you can keep using that for small things. But for us, because we want to make a GM level, we'll make an actual level. And we can choose between basic, empty, or copy an existing one. But now we'll start from complete scratch because we want to explain how everything looks. And we'll target Game Master mode, of course, because the Game Master mode needs to see the level. And let's call it something cool like Bridge of Echoes. Because, spoiler alert, I want to put a bridge in there. So here's a level which has basically nothing in it. Now the first things you get are the sidebar on the left, the game itself in the middle, root templates on the bottom, which contains all the items that you can place in the game, a world outliner which shows all the items you have in your level, and a preview of whatever you have selected in the root template panel. Now for this sake we'll do the message log away, and we'll boot up the preview a bit because you'll probably want to see whatever I select. And we'll put the root templates on the left so you have a better view of the game. Now the first thing you want to do when you have a new level which is completely empty is put something in there to walk on, so a terrain. So we'll open the terrain panel, which is over here, and we will add a new terrain. For that we'll have to fill in the size. Now don't go too extreme on this, One patch is already 128 meters, which is a significant size, and generally 1 or 2 up until like 3, 4 is more than you'll ever need. So specifically for GM level, because it's a small thing, a one-on-one patch of terrain is perfectly fine. And then you have to select your terrain material. So for this, which is a resource, it's basically all the data that we have available, so not put into root templates that you can place in the level, but just the raw elements of, for example, a texture or a model that you imported. For that we have the resource manager, which you can open with this button, and then you can select, in this case, a material, which is a material resource. All our materials are in shared. You can see a bunch of these. For terrain we have a nice tr_ prefix which you can use to search on, and then you can just select one. The one that you select here and add to the terrain will be the base layer on which everything in the terrain is based. So if you don't paint anything over it, you'll see this, but we'll probably paint a lot over it, so this one is fine. And we'll get a basic terrain with the lava rock material on top of it. Now, a few things you need to do to get a level working. Because the way it is now, we have an empty terrain, but you won't be able to do anything. Specifically, if you go into game mode, for example, there is absolutely nothing. Now, as you can see, we have a dummy. What you'll want to do is, there's our terrain, by double clicking on it, is place your dummy close to wherever you are, which you can do with just teleporting it with T. We'll put this one down by teleporting it with T, and then you will want to make your terrain walkable for your dummy and make it possible that he sees things. So for that you will go to the AI grid panel, and what you want to do here is do a full generate. It generates data for the AI, for the vision, and for material grid. What that means for AI is that it makes things walkable or not walkable. For vision, it makes stuff visible or not, depending on whether it is within range of wherever a person can go. And material information concerns, for example, the sound that your footsteps make when you walk on water or walk on sand. So you can do a full generate, and then if you press on AI, you will see whatever data has been generated. In this case, everything is red because we have set up no triggers or any indications of which part of the world is walkable or not. So to do that, we will put some start triggers in the world, which are triggers. We have start point. This defines where a player starts, and it also makes sure that everything that's connected to the start point will be walkable when generating AI. So for this case, we'll put on 4 immediately because I want to make this level playable with 4 players. And in the sidebar, we can see that basically it's start point 1 until 1, 2, 3. And we will signify the person that is spawning here by just setting the number correctly, which you don't necessarily need to do. If the start triggers are available, people will be spawned there. But if you want to get a specific setup when spawning players, you can give them a number. So this way, if we generate data now, we will see that everything turns green because now everything is connected to the triggers and the person can walk everywhere. And now if we play, we can actually see the level and we can walk around in it. Yeah, there is this very bright glow, and that's because we didn't have the lighting set up correctly. There's one thing you always have to do when setting up a level from scratch, and that is placing a light probe. So again, in the root template panel, the thing that you want to place would in this case be a light probe. You place one of these and you call this one whatever you want, and you set it to distant. There's always one distant light probe in the level, and this defines the lighting of the entire level according to the atmosphere around the light probe. So this is basically just a light element that you place. There's also local, which you can use to improve on the lighting in local situations by just placing it somewhere, and everything within the sphere or the box area around the probe will take more precise lighting according to that location. But what you mainly want is always just one distance to get lighting everywhere. You can see if I disable this that it slightly makes everything darker. That's because now we have a light atmosphere, and this one just takes some nice blue and applies it to everything. Now that we have this set up, we are sure that everything we need is done for the basics of making a level playable. And now we go into making our level. Now I want to get an idea of what I want to do with my level. So I want a mood or some sign of what kind of color we want in the level. So for that I will go to the work atmosphere panel and just browse through the different atmospheres that we have. This one's pitch black, which is not good, but there is a dawn, a cavern lighting, a red cavern lighting, and just by going through these you can test out whatever you want. If you want to make a level that is in a forest or in a swamp, you can just get a feel for it. Now I want specifically one that we have, which is lava, because I really like the fire that goes around in the air, and we'll take this one. Now you can see that the work atmosphere panel is just for switching between atmospheres. This is generally used actually to set the atmosphere to a actual work atmosphere. So this way, whatever you have for the level will in the editor be overridden by whatever you select here. So you can use this to set a work atmosphere and then work around in it without having trouble of like fire flying through your screen or shadows being too dark. You'll just have something that is very workable, and then when you boot up the game, the actual atmosphere that will be chosen will be taken from the level data. So here in the atmosphere settings is where we would actually want to put the lava atmosphere. And for that we'll go to our resource panel as is requested by the button. We'll go to the atmospheres and we will fill in the lava one that we had before, which is default lava A. We'll just put it in here. And now while this is work, we know that the actual game atmosphere will be lava A, and we can use that. Other properties here are hide shroud, which defines if you want or don't want to show the blackness in areas where a player hasn't gone yet, but this is not applicable to GM. And is Game Master level to make sure that the level is actually visible in Game Master. But if you target Game Master mode, this will automatically be true for you, so no need to worry on that. Now that that is done, we will start sculpting our terrain a bit so we get a feel of whatever we want to do, and then we'll start decorating. So the first thing we want to do now is take this terrain and start making the terrain according to what we want to do. I already called the level Bridge of Echoes, so I told you guys I want a bridge in there. So I will make a big ravine in the middle, and I'm going to do that by selecting the raise or the lower terrain function of the terrain panel to start painting or sculpting the terrain. Now generally I use the raise terrain because right click on raise terrain lowers as well, so you can use both raise and lower in the same function, and that's really easy when you want to switch a bit and go a bit around. So I will make a big hole here, and I will make it slightly easier by making the cursor mode a bit bigger. You can do that either by changing the radius in the settings, by right clicking on whatever mode you're using, or by using the square brackets, which is the default shortcut for changing the size. So if we do this, we can make a big hole in the middle. And then I switch to the flatten terrain mode, which just flattens everything to where I click. So I click here and I make everything about this size and this height. And that way I can easily make a hole in the middle of the level that will contain, I'm gonna leave some parts over here because I want to do something there later on, but don't worry about that now. Now we have a hole in the middle and two side parts, and on these side parts I will put my bridge. Now as you can see, it's cut off really strong, But the best thing you can do to solve that is take the smoothen terrain mode and just go over the edges, and that way everything will be smoothed out very nicely. So make this a bit bigger so it's easier. There we go. So we have some sides. Now, as you can see, the terrain mode is used for sculpting, but it's also used for painting terrain. So now everything is like a really black lava rock. What you could do is go into your resource manager, select whatever terrain you would like, so a terrain material again, for example, something sandy. Add it to your terrain. You'll get a request for that, yes. And then paint that over everything. You can see that we can use the terrain mode to like paint stuff. Now this is just a bit more clear what we're doing right now. So now we have this. We have our two small hills where we want to put our bridge on. So let's go into our root template, because a bridge is again something that we want to place. We'll look for bridges. We're not sure where they are, so we'll just filter on everything. You can filter on one thing by doing a right click, filter on everything again by doing a right click on the same thing, and then you can just go through it and look for whatever you need. In this case, I would want the Renard bridge because I like the model, and I would add it. Now, this is a part of our bridge, a small part, and that is because this is a wall. A wall is a specific type of item you can place, which gives you a special interaction mode. Everything, for example, polygon triggers also give you a specific interaction mode, which will just pop up here when you select it. Then you can use this for specific types of editing. In this case, we want the wall edit mode to drag the bridge from over here to over there. First, however, we're going to rotate it 90 degrees, so it looks, well, we'll take 180 degrees. Minus 90, my math. And now we can actually drag it from over there to the other side by clicking this, just selecting the wall and dragging it over. There we go. And we'll just make it a bit smaller because, let's be honest, it's too much. There we go. We'll move it a bit, like this. Move this part. And now that we have the wall, we can select the different parts of it and do a control scroll to just go over the different assets that we have for the wall and make it the way we want it to be. In this case, I would like a hole or two, but not too much. Just finish that off. Put it more or less center with terrain and change the terrain a bit because we didn't really get it correctly from the beginning. There, now we have an actual bridge part going over the two mountains. Now that we have this, we basically have the simple setup of our level done, and we'll just need to make everything playable because, again, if we go into game mode now, our player is over there on the bottom because we didn't move him. Our start triggers are on the edge, nothing is visible. So also if we go into AI, we see that it is still using the old AI, which is everything green, which is not good. And if we would do a full generate and change everything, everything would be red because our start triggers are not correct. So what are we going to do? We are going to, you can change these terms, by the way, with opacity to look through it. Anyway, we'll do it like this, and we'll move our start triggers, all 4 of them, to their actual location on the bridge. Now that we have this, we can generate again, check out the result, and see that we have an actual walkable bridge, which concludes the basic terrain sculpting of our level. Now it's into painting and designing to make it look more interesting. One thing, for example, we could do is make it look really interesting and make it fit with our atmosphere, which is the lava atmosphere, by painting some actual lava in there. So like I did before with the sand, we go into the resource manager. This time we look for some lava. For example, lava A, we add it to the list and we paint it. And as you can see, if we start painting now, we get something that looks kind of blackish, but does paint. So the question is, what's going on here? That's because we're working in a work atmosphere that for this specific case has no lighting, no shadow enabled. So while a work atmosphere is nice for easily seeing everything and setting everything up, be sure to always check that whatever you paint, whatever you put in the world, fits in the actual atmosphere, because in the actual atmosphere there is correct lighting. And for lava, for example, you already see that the result is much better than the work atmosphere. So we'll just put lava under the entirety of the bridge here. Color this stuff as well. There we go. And now we have a working mini level with a bridge, some lava around it, some cool waterfalls, lava waterfalls, and we can actually, if we go to our character, which is not correct, we place him at the correct location, which we can do by T again, just teleporting him around. And now we are in the level and we can walk around. And now, now we start decorating. Okay, so now that we have decorated everything, might have gone a bit fast, we can start putting in the finishing touches and then publish it. So the main thing you have to think about when you're decorating the level in between is just to take your time and go over all the assets we have available and the assets that you have downloaded from the internet, because while I know most of them and I know the names of them, in the beginning I also had to go through them, look what's interesting, look what I could place, what I couldn't place, and just think about that a while. Also, while placing, be sure to, when you're using the interaction modes, be sure to use the shortcuts if possible to make your life easier, because 1 until 6 are the shortcuts for the interaction modes, so the selection, translation, the rotation. And also make ample use of the shift function in the interaction modes, because every time you press shift and you then drag something, you make an exact copy of it. That's easy. It's an easy way to make symmetric levels and to easily copy things without having to do the scale every time again. So as you can see, I added some decoration to cover up the ugly part of the terrain. I made some sort of gateway, put some lights in there to make it more accessible. I also put some actual lights in there, which we'll show in a second. And then I am basically done and happy with it, so I can publish it. But first, the finishing touches. So as I said, designing takes a while, but take your time. What you want to do after that is make sure that your lighting is set up correctly. So as I said in the beginning, we have a distant light probe which does all the lighting for you. But if you don't update that one in between, everything might still look really dark as is now. So for that, go to your light probe, which you can easily access in the world outliner, and render it again. There is a option for this, or you can just move it somewhere. So if you render it, you'll see that because it is over here and somewhat close to lava, it will take some color out of that orange and apply it to the entire world. But I want to make this way stronger, so instead of putting it here on the edge, I will put it over there in the middle. This would be really, really strong, but I actually like that. So I'll put it like this, and now we have a strong lava lighting over the entire scene. Now in the middle though it's a bit too strong, and there's also nothing around the gates except for those little lights. So we'll add some actual lights to it, again via the root template panel, to finish up the lighting of the level. And for that we'll go into light, and let's say blue because it coincides with the pillars. We have a nice light blue over here, which I'll place in the level, but as you can see, it is way too weak for a current lighting setting. So we'll go into the sidebar, which contains all the information for whatever you selected. We'll make the light intensity much stronger. Let's say what happens on 200, still nothing. 2000 looks really strong, but the radius is not fine. So I could change radius here, or in a more interactive way, select the edit shape bounds and use that one to dynamically up the shape of the light to make the radius coincide with whatever I want. So now we put it here, and we see that it actually puts some light on the statue. So we'll put it here. Well, oops, my bad. Let's put this back on 2000. There we go. Go back to the light probe. And over here, we'll put this slightly stronger because, well, a bit more, slightly higher up as well. And we'll put the light probe slightly less strong because it's a bit strong. There you go. Now we have normal lights like this one. We also have spotlights, which is just type change. It's a two types of like direct lighting next to the light probes that we support. So for example, you could place one over there, make it a cool spotlight, which looks like this. You'll have to rotate it a bit, of course, to make it look good. Again, for this we have the interaction mode to make it bigger. And then you can put this on volumetric lighting, which is this, to have it actually look kind of good if you make the strength better. So 65, 25. Render shadows, there's the one. So now it actually renders the shadows around the light, and we'll make it a bit less strong because this is way too much. There we go. So now we have cool light coming from that side, and we'll copy that over to the other side as well after we make this a bit bigger. Move that over there, turn it around. Some cool lighting, actually fits the entire scene. Now to finish it up, there's one more thing we need to do before we start looking at our published settings, and that is control the camera of our character. So because of our AI, which we still need to regenerate, by the way, because it is good, but we need the stairs in there as well. There we go, easy peasy. What we need to do is make sure that our players have a camera movement that's more or less consistent with the level. So for that we will place a camera lock trigger, which is something you best always place to make sure that your camera does not go extremely far outside of the actual level you designed. So for that we will go into the triggers. We have a camera lock trigger, which we'll just place over here. And in the sidebar we can see that this is a polygon shape, but we'll make it a box because that is perfect for a bridge. And again we have a interaction mode for the box, which we can use to just shape it alongside the edge of the bridge. That way, whenever someone is playing the game, he will be able to go through the level without going outside of your design bounds. So now if I go to the right, it stops over here. If I go to the left, it stops over here. I can't go any further, which is good because I don't want people to go inside of the blackness out there. Perfect. So now we have our level set up and we basically have everything I think we need to be able to publish this on the workshop. We just go into our project settings and make sure everything is set up correctly. So our name, our author name, our description, which is really awesome, really awesome, and a thumbnail which will be visible on the Steam Workshop, so we can choose one from wherever that we are in the files. But to make sure we have a cool thumbnail, it's really useful to, for example, just go pick something of your level like this, go to level and do a snap thumbnail. This will not only give you a thumbnail on disk for your project, but will also change your thumbnail in the project browser and in the level browser to whatever you snap it to. So now we have an actual level thumbnail. And if we go into our project settings, we can look for that level in Kevin's awesome mod, levels, Bridge of Echoes, thumbnail, and we have our thumbnail there. And that basically sets up everything that we want to do, except for one thing, and that is the minimap. If you look here, it is completely black, and for that you will have to render it. Be sure to never forget that, because else if you go into game, you'll get a black screen, and I often forget that. So here is the world map renderer. I'll close these because we don't need these anymore. Here's the world map renderer. What it does is it asks you to set up some bounds and render. So for example, if you use the level bounds, add one minimap, which we'll use for the game, and render, we get this, which is because our atmosphere has a pretty big fog on it and the bounds are way too big, so everything will be blurred out. So what you want to do is take a trigger that more or less signifies whatever your level is. So in this case, I am very happy with this trigger because it more or less coincides with wherever we can play, and the minimap will be a square, so it will automatically make this thing a square for the render. So we'll also take most of the things outside of the trigger in there and make a nice correct minimap. So if we render this with use selected trigger, we get a cool minimap. And now if we go into game, we actually see a minimap both on the top right and as well if we open M for location and map markers. We can go over this. So now that we have absolutely everything set up, we can press the publish button. If we are content with this, we are not, because I see story here, which we don't want. Be always sure to check this. The tags signify whatever settings you have set in the settings window. So in this case, we would have set add-on, story, and GM. So it means we have an add-on which targets story and GM. So it can be played both in story and GM. Game master mode, which I don't want. So in the settings, general, I'll make sure that this is set up. Don't worry about these things. We have default settings for these. They are explained on our wiki. We'll link the description to the wiki. The link to the wiki is in the description below. You'll be able to check there what the default settings are and to make sure that everything is set up correctly. So if you have this and you go to publish again, you'll have the title, the thumbnail, the correct settings for our add-on, the description, and now you can choose to publish it to Steam or locally. Difference here is that Steam, well, that's the Steam Workshop. Local means you'll get a local copy of whatever you normally publish to Steam into your documents folder, so you can share it with friends on other websites or just send them the file directly. For now, I'll not publish this, but we'll put the final published version online on the workshop and on the wiki, so you can download it, check out the level, test it out yourself, see how everything works in there. And if you're happy with this, then you can check in game to see what the final result is. So we'll go out of the editor and into the game. I do advise to do this before you publish, so you are sure that everything you did in the editor actually also looks good in the game, because you do have a game mode in the editor in which you can look and see how everything works, but it's always nice to make sure that everything is set up absolutely correctly. So go into mods to be sure that your mod is in there. I have a couple already. I make a lot of awesome projects apparently. So Kevin's awesome mod in this case is available. So in Game Master mode, if you prepare a campaign, you create a new campaign, which you, for example, call Kevin's. Well, let's be consistent here. Kevin's awesome campaign. And you'll enable the add-on you want to have enabled. And you just create the campaign. And then the normal GM flow that you're used to, which is creating a pin, binding a level to that pin, calling it, I called it Bridge of Echoes, I think. So let's call this cool level Bridge of Echoes. And here we have the actual example thumbnail. So we'll just select this, load the level to be sure everything works. And we see that we have our actual level in there. So now we have whatever we want available to the user for placing, for example, let's say Alchemist, Barbarian, Dark Knight, and now we can start playing. So that's basically everything. Make sure that when you make a mod, you select correctly between adventure or add-on, you set up your target modes correctly. So story, arena, or GM, depending on where you want to be able that users can play this add-on. So in this case, because we make a GM level, we want specifically that it only targets GM mode, so people can only use it in GM mode. Then you just make your level, sculpt the terrain, decorate everything, put some lighting according to whatever you feel like is fine. Make sure your setting are correct and the thing is playable in game before doing the final publish. And you just put it on Steam or on any other website, and you let other people enjoy your content. So I hope you have learned something. If there are some other things that you found unclear or something that you want more explanation on, be sure to put some question in the description or go to our wiki or our forum, both of which the link we will put in the description below. So you can check it out, ask questions, and interact with the community, because we have an awesome community that is making a lot of content and is helping each other a lot in these early days. And it's really fun to see what people come up with. So I hope you enjoyed it, and maybe until the next video. See ya!